Again, welcome everybody to this first wonderful event sponsored by AIM Health Institute, The Beating Heart, the science and the mysticism, the sound, the healing. And with that, I'm going to pass on to JD, who's our moderator, and he's going to lead us into it.
Thanks, Misha. Hi, everyone. And with Misha and Fred, I'd like to welcome you to The Beating Heart, the science and mysticism of health. I'm JD Talasek. As Misha said, I'm going to be the moderator today. And also, just to reiterate how much we appreciate the AIM Health Institute and organizing and helping us be here. It's truly an honor to be here with all of you today. So as people are still entering the room, I want to take a moment to sort of reiterate some of the things Misha had mentioned about what you might expect and why we organized this workshop. We're going to hear from Misha, but also in conversation with this other wonderful gentleman, Fred Johnson, who will share their ideals from research, from their spiritual practice, and hopefully personal stories as well. We'll look at both the evidence and some of the hands-on practices, and then wrap up with an open discussion and Q&A. I'm just going to take a moment while people are still coming in to reiterate some of the housekeeping. We're going to try to stay muted until it's time for the questions. Please do use the chat feature on the side, especially if there's technical problems. As a moderator, I will try to incorporate comments into the discussion. And as you feel comfortable, we do hope that you'll turn your videos on unless there's a reason that you don't want to have it on. We are trying to create a feeling of community. And it's nice to see everyone's faces and to know that there's human beings on the other side of the technology. So why did we organize this event? Why does this topic, science and mysticism, why does it matter? We live in a time when, although medicine is advancing at breathtaking speed, human life is more fragmented and more disconnected between mind and body, between empirical and the sacred, between individuals and community. Health isn't simply the absence of illness, it encompasses mental, spiritual, and social dimensions. And in those dimensions lie great potential, healing that comes not only from the medicine, but also from meaning, from ritual, from storytelling in our personal narratives, and from mystery itself. So this workshop, The Beating Heart, is an invitation for us to explore the intersection together where research meets the spiritual and mystical impulses that many of us carry from our different traditions. So to ground us today, I wanted to share a few compelling stories, some evidence showing why this integration is real, why it's measurable, and is increasingly central in health research. In 2019, the National Institutes of Health funded $20 million over 5 years to support research connecting music therapy with neuroscience, exploring how music can help with neurological disorders, mood and well-being, as well as much more. That funding has seeded even more research, suggesting that this is fertile ground for further scientific exploration for what many of our ancient ancestors and traditions have known for centuries, that music, singing, chanting, meditation, they all have healing properties, not only for the individuals, but for our communities. An example of this type of research includes university hospitals using electronic health record data over thousands of music therapy sessions to study how music therapy relates to stress, pain, and anxiety, and coping in medical settings. Furthermore, a 2023 U.S. Surgeon General stated that loneliness is an epidemic and that it poses health risks at just as deadly as smoking 15 cigarettes a day, and it costs billions in healthcare expenses. So a possible response to this epidemic could be using what is called social prescribing. That social prescribing is an approach where healthcare professionals refer patients to non-medical community-based activities to reduce loneliness, to build community, and to improve health in holistic ways. So imagine your doctor prescribing art or dance classes, or perhaps a nature walk, not just because of movement, but because of meaning making and created shared experience. So, my hope for today is that you will come to this workshop with open minds, as well as we begin to explore where science and mysticism overlap in the service of our health. I hope that we might find both inspiration or tools to bring these insights into our work, our communities, our lives. And I hope that we might make a sense of connection to each other and the larger currents of meaning. So let me just kind of step back and say for a moment, how did this come about? I often like to joke that I don't know much, but I know people who do. But if I had an identity, if I felt like my personal identity, my one gift is that I intuitively know how to put people together. And last year, I introduced two people who were very important to me, Fred Johnson and Dr. Mikhail Kogan, Misha. I think by the end of our time together, you're going to understand why I feel this way. So I met Fred about 3 years ago doing work with the National Academy of Sciences and the Gulf Research Program. We were trying to bring creative practitioners to bring both art and science together in a way that would help think about different ways of approaching the community, the health and the environment down in the Gulf region as a response to the oil spill and other natural disasters. Fred, through his gifts of music and storytelling, became transformative in this space, building those conversations and changing the conversations. It was really an amazing thing. Fred is a world-renowned jazz vocalist, a master teacher of sacred sound and chantorial traditions, and a sound healer. He is the artist in residence and community engagement specialist at the Straz Center for the Performing Arts in Tampa, Florida. He's also the performing artist in residence with me at the National Academy of Sciences and has worked for years with the National Endowment of the Arts Creative Forces Initiatives, which is a project designed to address issues of trauma and PTSD through music and the arts. And also we have with us, who we've already heard from, Dr. Kogan, Misha. I consider Misha and his family to be dear personal friends. They're my extended family. And I'm inspired almost daily by Misha's ability to integrate diverse knowledge and complex ideals into the service of helping others, and in healing. So I knew intuitively that the ideals and values that Fred and Misha hold would resonate with one another, even though professionally they come from very different perspectives. And that's where the important stuff lies, is looking at things through the different lenses. For those who don't know, Misha is the Chief Medical Officer at GW Center for Integrative Medicine, an Associate Professor of Medicine at George Washington University, and the founder of the AIM Health Institute, who is hosting us today. So with no further ado and no further delay, I'd like to hand this over to Misha and Fred, and I think that Misha is going to kick us off. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you, JD. So in preparation for today, we kind of decided how we're going to organize this, and we're going to start with a little practice right off the bat, so that we all arrive together and that we all align ourselves. But before I do that, I want to also mention another organization, and this is Inayati, a Sufi order, and both Fred and I are students of this lineage. So I'm going to put that in the link, and I want to read you two quotes, one from the founder of the organization, and another one from the current leader, Pirzia. But the first quote is coming from Hazrat Inayat Khan, and you can find it on the link I just posted. The objectives is to realize and spread the knowledge of unity, the religion of love and wisdom, so that the human heart may overflow with love, and all hatred caused by distinctions and differences may be rooted out. I think you can all agree, those of us on this side of the ocean living in the United States, I think you can all agree that the statement that he made over 100 years ago cannot be more actually present for us today. And I also asked grandson of Hazrat Inayat Khan, Pirzia Inayat Khan, to give us a quote for today. the way he thinks this new initiative taking place. And of course, I also hope that at some point Perzia will join us for one of the future events. Collaboration between trailblazers in medicine, music, and contemplative practice is just the path into the future we all need. So thank you, Hazrat Nadhan, and thank you, Perzia, for this wonderful quote to get us started. So let's center. We're going to do a very simple breathing practice for about 5 minutes. If you're not comfortable and you need to lay down, absolutely, by all means, just go ahead and lie down. Use any support. You don't have to be sitting with a straight back. You just need to be comfortable. So go ahead and close your eyes. And we call this an elemental breath. Each breath is in honor of a particular element. And the way we start with the earth. So we are inhale through our feet. We're imagining when we draw the breath in through our nose, that the breath reaches base of our spine. And then when we exhale back into the earth. And both inhale and exhale is through the nose. If you're a visual person, you can imagine color yellow in the base of your spine. And you can also think of any physical impurities that your body may be experiencing. Maybe you have a pain or some discomfort, and you can breathe it out. And you can return it to earth. Ultimately, this physical substance that we're experiencing as each one of our bodies ultimately will be recycled and returned back into the earth. And it's natural here with this breath to feel touching the earth, to feel the density of the earth, to feel being grounded. The breath is slow, not forced, gentle, comfortable. We'll take 2 more earth breaths in and out of the nose. And we'll switch to the water breath. Inhale through the nose and exhale through the mouth. Imagining that we are positioned into the body of water. You can imagine your favorite lake. Maybe if you live next to ocean. Or maybe you just really like your shower, and that's fine. Just imagine that the source of water is continuously flowing through our body, cleansing every cell, every space between the cells. Inhaling, inviting the pureness of water into our bodies, and then exhaling, releasing any impurities with it, letting it flow out, letting it to improve fluidity of our blood and lymph and the interstitial tissue, the tissue between different tissues, the space. Our body is 60% water. So attuning to the element of water is of substantial importance. The power of elemental breaths is that it brings us a little bit closer to nature. Nature is the first and the last healer. And also nature is something that many of us have been partially disconnected. So it's very helpful to be reminded and to be placed back into the elements, into the natural elements. And one more water breath. And we transition to the fire breath. Inhale through the mouth, exhale through the nose. And here we can imagine a fire being built in our hearts, in our chests. The flames are rising, burning any emotional impurities we may be feeling. It's a beautiful part of the practice to allow any frustration, any anger to be transmutated, to be given to the fire, to be changed into something beautiful, into the warming flames that let us be comfortable instead of being dragged continuously by the negativity of our emotional states. So let's, for this few minutes that we're doing this practice, to let the emotions pass. And if your body begins to feel a little stressed, just accept it. Let it slowly relax. Maybe check in with your face, with your forehead, with your jaw. Make sure nothing is locked. Make sure you're as relaxed as you could be. And we'll do 2 more fire breaths here. Moving on to the air breath. Inhale and exhale through the mouth. And here our breath becomes more refined, more gentle. We imagine our mental plane to be purified. Every time you have a thought coming into your consciousness, imagine that you're laying in the grass looking up into the sky, seeing the clouds moving. The air is flowing. You feel the fresh breeze, and your thoughts are just like the clouds. They're just there passing by. We don't have to attach any of our emotions or any of our being to the thoughts. They're just simply a part of who we are. Responding to them is our choice. So for the couple of minutes we're going to do this breath, let's just flow with our thoughts without being attached to any of them. Allowing our face and our body to relax even deeper. Going a little bit deeper, sensing that each thought is given as a friend from above. That ultimately there is a source that we want to get a little bit closer to. We'll take one more air breath. And we'll do the last breath, the ether breath, the breath that combines all elements together. And you can inhale and exhale through the nose, or you can inhale and exhale through the nose and mouth together. very refined, very gentle, very slow. And here we tune into our personal connection to the greater, to the nature, to God, whatever your name for that is. We all have the way we link, we connect to that source. And here we simply ask to have that connection be purified, to fine-tune our intuition, to fine-tune our capacity to feel subtle, to see things that often we skip, to hear things that we often skip. In a few minutes, we'll be sharing different sounds and the music, and so fine-tuning our capacity to experience this is what we ask here for. We'll take 2 more breaths. Let's slowly come back into our shared space. Maybe take a quick look at the people around you. And I'll pass it on to Fred to lead us into the main part of this.
Thank you, Misha. It's an honor to be here with you all. Thank you so much for sharing one of your most valuable commodities, and that's your time, as we have this beautiful shared conversation about, the medicine and the mystical journey. Really giving ourselves permission to kind of celebrate the beauty of that and the power of that. It's this is really this is a really important day for me because for most of my life I've been on this journey of exploration and utilization of song and sound and imagination. And interestingly enough, there's a very dear friend of mine who is on the call today, who 50 plus years ago, he was a part of a classical mime company that I was the artistic director of. So my journey of sound and silence has been an interesting one, and one where it's really great to have a shared conversation about the medical benefits, the medical richness of the beating heart. We're talking about the beating heart now, the rhythm of the beating heart, the biology, if you will, of the beating heart, and then the essence of the breath of the beating heart. This journey of the beating and the rhythm of the heart. We all know that we are vibrational beings that live in a vibrational world. So I will tell you that in the first 5.5 years in my life, I was what they called a ward of the state. So I was in and out of orphanages and foster homes in the state of New Jersey. So in those I was a ward of the state from 18 months of age until 5.5. And so in those developmental times, in that evolutionary period when I was coming to know the world, I didn't have someone that was consistently holding me, or I didn't have voices that were consistently with me. What I had was the sound of my own voice. And so my early remembrances of how I was able to calm myself and how I was able to settle in is I did 2 things that science and research and the medical profession will tell you that the body has a need for sound and the body has a need for motion. So I was one of those perpetual rockers, and I created sound. Because I could feel it inside of me. So that combination of motion and sound was kind of like my womb. It was my mother embrace, it was my auntie embrace, it was my grandfather embrace. It was my way of, from the inside out, feeling a connection to being, right? So what I'd like to ask you to do now, right, is just gently place your hand on your heart and close your eyes if this feels right for you. And I just want you to take a beautiful breath, and I want you to imagine that this inhale, this breath that you're taking that breath from the edge of the edge of the edge of the universe. And as you take this beautiful breath in, I want you to then give yourself permission as you exhale to just send a beautiful, warm, loving tone on the exhale and send it through the heart. Take a breath in. And one more time, one big, beautiful breath from the edge of the universe. Breathe it in and send it through the heart. So feel that beautiful vibration of your voice, the vibration of your beingness moving through your beating heart. And I would ask you, because we're living at an interesting time where there appears to be a lot of conversation about divides, and we're trying to figure out and understand how to be united. What does this unity thing mean? What does this oneness thing mean? And so I want to invite you to take a gentle journey, and I'm going to use my drum just for a second, and I want you to breathe into this and just imagine we're going to take a little bit of sort of a journey of a rebirth. We're gonna take another experience of our heart and our breath. Okay, so let me just put my little drum on here for a second. And this is a very, very real journey. It's so exciting. This is a journey of unity, a journey of oneness. If you can hear my drum, just nod your head. Can you hear the drum? So just allow for this perfect moment to breathe into a journey with me, the journey of beautiful you, and your journey into now. You created unique and beautiful, part of this great creation, as we do the dance of the beating heart and the song of the breath. So just feel your breath and just listen for a moment as I take you on a journey of possibility. Imagine when creation calls you to take the journey of the life plane, to here in this life reality come together and create a manifestation that evolves into beautiful you. And as you move into this life place, the way that you announce yourself on this life's journey is the beautiful, sweet, taking a big breath, letting it out. And on a good day of perfection, your song begins, your song of the breath, your song of the breath, your beautiful song of the breath. So from the moment that you enter this, the now place, that rhythm of your beautiful beating heart, and the song of your beautiful breath becomes one here in the living place, and the beating of the heart and the song of the breath continue from moment to moment, from moment to moment. This beautiful created reality of your beating heart, the biology of the rhythm of your being, coupled with the beautiful unseen but fully felt breath of breathing in and breathing out, singing that beautiful melodic song that you breathed from the beginning of your journey when you left mother's place into the now place. And so in unison, the song of the breath with the beating heart is the beginning of the mystical, the unknown journey, right? The journey of exploration of who to be, how to know, how to connect, how to move through this amazing life journey with that continuum of your beating heart, the biology of your beating heart, the beautiful, mystical, felt sense of the beating heart, connected and combined to your beautiful breath, breathing in, breathing out, being nurtured with the song of life in every moment. And this continuum goes on and on. And this song of the breath unites all living things, regardless of how tall, how short, what color, what language. The song of the breath song, unseen but felt by all created things, is the source of our unity. So as we breathe into an understanding and embrace of this beautiful medicinal journey of understanding how to nurture, care for, and understand the physiology of our being, coupled with this amazing song of the breath, which each of us are gifted in every moment, then we begin a unified journey. And the seat of that unified journey is within us. And it is within us that the beating heart and the breath come together. And it is within us that the greater exploration of the mystery or the mystical journey of being goes on and on. So that when we open our eyes and move through the physical world, our inner understanding of the medical and the mystical, the medicinal essence of our creative effort to create and manifest that which is for the greater good, is truly the union of the medical, the medicine, and the mystical journey of health, healing, and being. Breathe in through the nose, breathe out through the mouth, and be bathed in the water of the possibilities of the beating heart journey. Breathe in through the nose, breathe out through the mouth. And say for me, I am rhythm and breath. 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 mouth. In through the nose, out through the nose. And be grounded back here in our shared earth space. Yeah. Yeah, maybe. Back to you, Misha.
Well, I need to come back. I don't know where you led us, but it's a
It's a
powerful
good
experience.
space. It's a good
It's a good
space.
space. And that's the space we're going to talk about. And this is the space where if you touch this deep enough, when the inner conversation stops and you begin to tune into what's possible, that's the beginning of the healing itself. This is where the mystery of healing comes from. And I'm gonna say something critical. You know, we forgot about this. If you look at the general society, if you look at the healthcare professionals, and trust me, I'm in the thick of it every day. I'm in a very busy practice. I see upwards of sometimes 100 patients a week or more. And we forget. We think that we understand what we're doing. We think that prescribing different treatments is what's evidence and what's out there, but we forget this level. We forget that actually this is where the true medicine and healing comes from. The tools are tools. They're just going to be different. 20 years from now, they'll be different. 20 years ago, they were different. They're going to keep changing. But the source where this information comes from, the source that guides us to those medicines, that's always the same. It's always here. We just touched it. We touched it in breath. We touched it when we tuned into our own hearts. There's a reason why we call this event a beating heart, because every one of us talking, listening, breathing, have the beating heart, which is the guide. One of many, but the loud one and the one that can be used continuously throughout our lives. And I think Fred just gave us wonderful experience on how quickly you can get there. I mean, this was what, Fred? Less than 10 minutes, right? And sense the shift that occurred in that little period of time. So we can always go there and we can always re-experience things. And we can always help others to do the same. I think one part of the problem with this world is there's not enough of us aware of this space. And I think the more people get aware of it more regularly, the more powerful this shift will become. So with that, I'll pass it on to JD to moderate a little bit of a discussion here.
Yeah, well, thanks, Misha. Thanks, Fred. I think my first words of I'm very proud of making the connection between two amazing human beings is true, and now I think people have a sense of what I've been talking about and thinking about. But Misha, I'd like to kind of lean into what you just said about the medical profession. I think that as we've become divided, segmented, we've advanced healthcare, and at least for me, growing up in Western culture, was thinking about everybody started just putting a lot of faith in medicine and science, and then it became that this was the only path. And what we're experiencing, what we're talking about here, is this idea of not one being right or wrong or better than the other. It's about looking at something through two different lenses and getting and growing from that perspective. And I wonder if both of you could kind of talk about that a little bit more. There's a danger when you start talking about things. The tendency is to want to talk about their differences. And what we're talking about is how do these things come together to help us find a space that is healing, that's maybe a different modality.
I mean, if I can, I'll just take a moment to say, I think one of the first things that we do is we stop dividing it up. You know, I said we live in in a world where everything is segmented. Everything's got to have a title. I mean, let me ask a question: how many people here in this that are with us today? How many people love music? Right? How many people have hummed in the shower or hummed somewhere else? Right? Right? How many people have find themselves in a situation where, like, you know, I don't know, they experience something that's kind of frustrating and they go, oh, how many people have done that? Right? How many people have been saddened and wept and cried, and after you cried, you felt better. You felt the essence of that. How many people have had that experience? I mean, you know, what we're talking about is we're talking about natural gifts that we're given that we forget about. You know, we tend to departmentalize. I'm going to the doctor for whatever, or I'm going to the spiritual place for whatever. You know, it's all a part of our being every day. I think that that's the important thing for us to recognize, that we don't have to negate one thing in order to amplify and magnify another. That it's important. You know, many of the great wisdom traditions of the world say, you know, as you speak, so you are. I mean, so, you know, if we're having you know, the frequency and vibration of our voice, that's the reason why I asked you to breathe in and then breathe out, sending tone through your heart. Every word that we speak resonates inside of us before it goes into the world. We tend to think about communication as an external thing, a way of connecting with another. But the frequency and vibration of our own voices resonate inside of us. You know, then that's a powerful thing. I mean, I just came through having hip replacement, right? And, you know, I mean, my breathing was a really, really important part of that journey. It was important for me. And you know, I consider myself, I can hold a note for 3 hours, you know, but, you know, it's like breath is an important part of what are we doing? You know, what are we putting, all of these things, what do we put in, what we're putting into our body and how it nourishes us? What are we doing with the physicality of our bodies? What are we thinking and articulating with our minds? What are those herbs and medicinals and pharmacological essences that can become a part of the fullness of our being? You know, I mean, I think it's that we've conditioned. Art is a very perfect example. You know, like art, you know, music, the music industry, the orchestral industry, the dance industry, the galleries and museums, the visual art industries. We've separated everything. But in the most ancient of traditions, those who had the medicinal voices, you know, before the community came together to have a conversation about what decisions we're going to make about what we're going to do together, they worked first on being together. They sang together, told stories together, ate food together, laughed together. And, you know, and when someone was in need, everyone in the community was a part of that medicinal essence. And so a part of it, I think, is to really breathe into a sense of what's the oneness of all of this. You know, I've learned so much from my science and research and medical colleagues about the body, about the neurological system. And as an artist, it helps me to understand that when I'm creating sound, when I'm creating a safe space, I'm now incorporating that knowingness with an intentionality to create a safe, healing, whole space, fully and completely. So the more that we can know about each other, the more that we can embrace this, then the more the opportunity for us to heal and be whole, and for that to magnify. That's why people work so hard at divide and conquer, because unity, thinking alike, being alike, recognizing that each of our individual attributes strengthens our whole ability to be one. This is what I learned from Dr. Misha. This is what I learned from JD Talasek. This is what I learned from many of my colleagues in the Sufi community. We're one. We're at oneness. There's so much. It doesn't have to just be an intellectual concept. Life and living, wholeness and healing is a way of being. We talk a lot about what do we need to do. Let's breathe into what we can be, how we can be healthy in mind, body, and spirit. Spirit, you know, comes from the Latin word spiritus, which means breath. So to be in spirit is to be in full breath. I'm sorry I talked too long. The concept is, move away from the divide and move towards the inclusion, move towards the understanding of the oneness. Recognize that it's okay to not have all the answers. And when I have a pain, I can go to the doctor and communicate with the nurse. I can communicate with medical experts, recognizing that in order to do that, I don't have to give up my own personal power and not participate in my own health and well-being. We are always co-therapists in the health and well-being of our body, our minds, and our spirits, and our world. Shift the conversation, just like you said, JD, from divide to what we have together, what we personally have within us, our voices, our breath, our abilities to dream and imagine. That's why going and looking and it's creativity in all of its essence. I mean, I talked about it's kind of like the biology of being, like the beating heart and the biology of the breath. It's the fullness. It's inclusive. It's all as one. We don't have to negate one thing in order to bring greater value to another, unless it's not for the greater good of all. If it's damaging, that's a different thing. Right? It's all one. It's that oneness. It's like the oneness of the breath and the oneness of the beating heart. They work in unison with each other, and they listen to each other vibrationally and otherwise. And that's both a scientific and a mystical fact.
I had, as Fred was talking, I was thinking about the concept that I mentioned earlier, social prescribing. And Misha, I guess this is more towards you as a medical practitioner, but what would it take to say, okay, so the patient comes to you and there's maybe they're in pain, maybe there's some discomfort or whatever. It's like, okay, maybe you might want to try this pill, but you might also want to take a nature walk. You may also want to socially prescribe some sort of activity as well as that. How does that fit within the medical profession? What would it take for the medical profession or to medical practitioners to see the importance of combining this with medicine?
Well, let me give you first a realistic point on where things are. And again, if you're somewhere else in the world and you're not in US, maybe you have a somewhat of a different system and you're in a better shape than we are, great for you, but not for us. There is a sense that everything we're talking about here, the power of self-regulation, the power of breath, the power of connection to nature, there's a sense in the medical community that this is not evidenced enough, that we shouldn't be wasting our time on things that are not cannot be proven in a double-blind randomized control fashion to cure you out of particular state or particular symptom or disease. And this is what we teach to our students. We're very frank that there's a certain levels of evidence for everything we do. The problem is very simple, though. This is all bullshit from beginning to an end. Less than 10% of our current medical system is truly evidence-based. If you don't believe me, you can go and visit lots of different resources where it's quite clearly spelled out. And the reason for that is that we are in a machine. We're operating inside a large machine that creates the evidence based as it goes. It's like, think of it, a massive train on a track, and it continuously feeding itself to keep moving forward. I'll give you a very simple example of antidepressants, right? So they're used quite a lot. Sometimes they're really good drugs. They can work really well, but can also create a lot of serious side effects, like low sodium, for example. The problem is not that. The problem is for each study that's ever published, there's 10 negative studies that never have. And if you put all that evidence together and you truly actively say, let's be honest with ourselves, there's going to be zero evidence that antidepressants are any use whatsoever for general population. They're going to be useful for specific conditions. And the lesson here is this: we're getting the evidence where we're putting our money and our efforts and our minds towards. And we're not putting enough minds, efforts, and evidence and dollars or resources into studying the effects on health of other things we can be doing. And sure, there is no randomized control trial that you can look at some of this energetic footprints of what we just did for 20 minutes or so. It's difficult. We need to come up with different mechanisms for studies. We need to come up with different capacity to research these things. But more importantly, we have to come up with honoring our own experiences. We have to say that what we just experienced is just as real as taking a pill, and not less. It's different. Just what Fred said, it's completely different. You can't compare those things, but it doesn't mean that this refined, ephemeral way of us being together is not real. It's real. And what's really critical, that the more you stay in that space, the healthier you get. And that's the concept that when I try to communicate with my own colleagues, that's the concept that I get usually smeared on, because they basically don't know. Most of the people that are in depth of the standard healthcare system, they're having a hard time experiencing this. Not everybody. I mean, I have my own colleagues here at university who are, many of them will understand what I'm trying to say. But interestingly, when I try to engage them, when I say, well, why aren't you not talking about this to your patients? The answer is, well, we're not getting paid to do so. The system is not aligned with these methods. And I think we're here to change it. I think the whole significant part of health, of AIM Health, is to say, we have to go there. Of course, that's not the only place we're going to go there. I mean, we have robust clinical programs we're trying to develop. We're going to integrate other methods. We're going to use very concrete tools like acupuncture, for example. But what we're doing here is we're teaching ourselves to be a little bit more refined, to go a little bit under that conscious awareness and sense, where is the balance of our health there? Do I need to learn to breathe a little bit deeper? Is my right flank a little bit in spasms because part of my breath is not right? You know, and what do I need to fix this? I'm not going to need to take a pill for that. There's no pill for something like this. You will need to find a practitioner who can help you to open this up. Maybe a Pilates teacher, or maybe Alexander technique, or maybe acupuncturist, or maybe none of the above. Maybe you're just going to learn it yourself. The more of these practices you do, eventually your body will tune into it itself. And the last concept in answer to this question I want to bring is this space we're creating. I call this space a retreat space. And I feel that half of my professional life currently is spent in trying to teach others how to get into that retreat space. And I think that this retreat space in some ways is more important for healthcare practitioners even than for patients, because it's the healthcare practitioners who have to say, this is real. We have to be tuned into that, because if we operate out of that space and then we bring medicine to the masses, we're going to be more effective, because we will optimize the placebo effect. We'll tune intuitively into certain situations where we would know better what to do and what not to do. And I would highlight, often it's absolutely essential to not do certain things. One of my main current medical messages is, in America, 250,000 Americans die every year from medication prescriptions, from care as usual. 250,000 every year. Not from errors, not from some mistakes done in some overarching systems. No, just the medicine practice as usual. Practice as usual gotten too toxic. Why? Because we're not doing this. We're not building our health. We're trying to reverse the disease without building the health. And when I was thinking about this activity, one of the core things I said to myself, how are we creating a whole series of events like this, not just this? We're opening with this because Fred and JD are amazing, and also because this is, for us, this is what speaks first. But ultimately, we'll cover every topic. We'll cover nutrition. In a few weeks, we're covering stress, and we're covering importance of movement. So we're doing this little yoga retreat with Chief Wellness at George Washington University, Dr. Lee Frame, who's also a chief of Integrative Medicine here at GW. And she's also a yoga teacher. And so if anybody interested, take a look. But we will start doing these events as a continuous process. A couple of years ago, I came up with this idea of age-wise retreats. So this is what this is. This is our first age-wise retreat. in general public in an open space like this, and we hope that this will continue. JD, back to you.
Misha, I love this ideal, and I really didn't think about it from the medical practitioner's standpoint of needing to be tuned in with this. That this isn't just the doctor giving something to the patient receiving it. That the idea of being tuned in is so much more complex and rich than just the simple interaction of going to the doctor. There's an interesting conversation going on in the chat, and I kind of want to bring this in. It builds on what we're doing, but it also builds on a conversation I've had with Fred. I think it was Gina that was sort of introduced this idea, or the comment that often health professionals do recommend that you go exercise, do yoga, be outdoors, and things like that. And that's, I've heard that too. Move more, do this. Misha was talking about the medical profession and the problem with that. Fred and I, who both come from the arts, we've talked about this from, sort of what he's doing at the Stress Center in building this sort of reimagining community. Those of us who are trained in arts who want to do this need to also have some training and some understanding of how this interaction happens. In other words, it's not, this is where social prescribing comes in. It's not like you're just going to say, I'm going to go take a walk or go join a community. The ideal situation, and this happens a lot more in the UK and Europe, where social prescribing is taking a stronger foothold faster. It's the ideal of the doctor actually has a network, and they know that there's people at this center or this project or this class that actually have some training. For example, Fred and we talked about at the Stress Center some programs that they're doing to deal with trauma. Well, okay, what if you're effective with the trauma? What if you're in that moment in a performance with an audience where trauma starts coming up? How are you trained to deal with that trauma? Are there people on hand at that point that can deal with trauma? So I wonder if both of you, and maybe Fred, especially you, kind of talk about the ideal of what we need from the art side. We've heard kind of Misha's input or thoughts from the medical side and some things that need to change there. But as far as those of us in the arts and training in the arts, what's another ideal situation that we need to be moving towards?
I mean, again, I think a part of it is a greater understanding. For instance, the situation that you just spoke about, JD. I mean, I want to acknowledge the fact that there's been a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of expertise that's gone into the development of specific artists who are therapists, who work in clinical settings. They understand, they understand the science, they understand how to practically apply in clinical settings and how to work with folk physically and emotionally. One of the great conversations that we have is, so there are art therapists who do visual arts, there are art therapists who do movement, there are art therapists who do music, there are art therapists who do literature. So there is this wonderful spectrum of artists who are also therapeutically trained, so to work in clinical settings. A lot of what we do, like what we do at the Performing Arts Center, is we create safe therapeutic spaces. We create spaces where, like, we first started out with veterans. So veterans who are involved in various forms of art therapy in clinical settings. When they leave the clinical setting, where do they go to continue that journey? They have the opportunity to come to us. So I think more broadly, my answer to it is there's a lot as artists, as creatives, that we can know and understand about the mind and the body. So that as we create with that level of sensibility and in spirit too, going back to the concept of the mystical, it's like I oftentimes breathe into being open to creating music, to creating rhythm, to creating space where people feel safe and can hear your heartbeat, and can hear your breath. So it's that fusion. One of the things that we're doing this year with our reimagining team is to begin to have conversations and create space where artists, visual artists, performance artists, literary artists can come together and learn and know what the science and research community has come to, to know, to help quantify what many of us have known and what our ancestors have known for thousands of years, that, when you dance, something happens inside of you. You feel something inside of you, so there was many years where people would say, yeah, great, you feel good. Feel good is good. No, but there's a whole thing. Listen, once I was introduced to the concept of the vagus nerve, I became like, wait a minute, let me just share this with you. So, the more we can know and understand about the neurology, about the, about the psychology, about the physiology of the body, so that as we step into creating, as we create music, as we create spaces, as we involve and invite people to create, they feel comfortable. And when we are in situations that go beyond the scope of our understanding, then it's important for us to lean in and to take hand with our our therapy experts, so that together we can always create a safe space, right? I mean, I think that's important. I think one of the opportunities that we have in our world, even in terms of talking about a broader sense of oneness, and that's not just a like a philosophical concept, but it is a felt sense concept. It's like how I feel is important, how I feel when I'm in relationships in relationship to other people. So the science, the science and the research and the medical realities, it's important for us as creatives to have a knowledge and a sense of that. So as we create, we're not just creating in a bubble. The more you can know, the better you can serve, as long as that what you know doesn't get in the way of going and doing what you need to do, and creating those safe kind of spaces. I get that wisdom from my dear friend Mortimer McGuire. So, it's important for us to, really reimagine and really, breathe into every moment and take a look at how all of this can combine and create. It can create
what I
change.
love.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Fred, I didn't mean to step on
No,
you.
man.
To let what you're doing at the Stress Center is what I'm seeing so often at the Performing Arts Center. Something Renee Fleming often says, that all performing arts centers should be community centers. So your group there at the Straz and other places that are similar, this importance of thinking of music and this connection with the performing arts as not being entertainment. It can be entertaining, but it's so much more. And what you just described is that essence. There's some wonderful conversations going on in the chat. I do want to take a moment. An early question was, somebody wants to know more about the drum that you're using and to maybe show it. One of the things that I loved the very first day that I met Fred is he walked up on the stage and he started using his body as a percussion instrument, and that all ties in with this idea of our beating heart. That this is the drum is our beating heart. It simulates the beating heart. Fred, tell us about this. And you also need to emphasize the fact that some of Fred's instruments that he plays, I don't think this one, but a lot of them he makes himself. So he's very tied into that tradition.
Yeah, so this is a box drum, or what would it's really kind of a laptop version of the cajon, or the box drum. It has a resonant surface, a thinner playing surface on the front, a hole in the side, but it's based upon the same tradition. I'm sure many of you have seen the Peruvian or African influenced box drums, which is called a cajon, which in Spanish is Spanish for box, but it's a drum tradition. It was introduced to me initially by my great teacher Baba Kwame Ishangi from Ghana, West Africa. There was a period of time in America when slaves were brought from Africa to the New World. The drum was not permitted. It was banned. It was prohibited, because it was felt that the drum could be used in ritual and in language. It was an empowering thing. So the different tribes were divided up, so they had difficulty in communicating language-wise, and also the drum was banned. But in the rare occasions when those who held the tradition of the drum or understood it could get a crate or a box, they would play on that crate. They would play those rhythmic patterns on the crate. And, the slavers would just think, oh, they're just having fun. But the tradition was kept alive really through this box drum tradition. Then in the slave quarters, there'd be maybe a small table or a small crate used. And then it could be then reversed and used to keep the tradition alive until the conga drum was created here in the West. So I love the tradition of playing on wood. When you play on wood, you feel a different rhythmic essence as well. And just to know that pretty much, I was that kid. I was that kid in the third grade that would get in trouble all the time for banging on my desk. I'd be tapping on my desk all the time, and they used to make you go in the coat room or stand in the corner and stuff like that. Now I get paid lots of money to beat on wood, so you never know what you learn and how it becomes your reality in life.
That's thanks, Fred. I want to acknowledge that Carly has placed in the chat a very wonderful story about what this very session has meant to her. I won't read all of this, or she's put in the chat for everybody, but she's has a very active nervous system and came with a certain level of issues into the things, and really wants to express her appreciation and gratefulness for this experience. She writes, this afternoon's combination of rocking, humming, singing, and breath work, and doing so in a group, art, in community, brought my body into a state of regulation, rest, and compassion. I'm very grateful. So, and I'm grateful to you, Fred and Misha, for doing that for us as well. I don't think that we really discussed the logistics, but I do want to, like Carly or others, to unmic at this point and contribute to the questions and the conversations. I'm not sure if we have a way of raising hands.
Yes, there is. It's best to, if you go under where you see react, there's a place where you can literally just put the hand up and it says raise hand. When you click on react button, like there's this little heart, you will see that there's a raise hand like this. So see, I'm putting that. So if you do that, then we'll ask you to unmute and speak up, or you can just keep putting your questions into the box.
And Gina, why don't we have you unmute since you have your hand up?
Hi, this is a great opportunity, and I also want to thank you. I am a clinical social worker, and one of the things that frustrates me a lot in my work with people is I would like to refer a lot of them to functional medicine practitioners. And, they'll go on a website and they'll say, oh man, looks fabulous, but I don't have that kind of money. I can't do that. And so I actually, I'm really careful not to recommend it to people because that's just a source of frustration. And I also don't want to sound like a, thoughtless, privileged person who doesn't recognize my own privilege. So this is a fantastic initiative that I don't know, I hope will make some of this more accessible to people who really, really need it. So I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Gina, this is why I signed up to do this. I feel 100% like you. This is why we actually started AIM Health Institute, because the whole idea was the access integrated medicine. The whole idea was, this is wrong. I mean, I had a meeting with our chair of the board yesterday, and one of the board members, and we had this conversation, and I said, I realized that quite often I have faculty from my own institution would call me and say something along the lines, oh, my wife has a pain. Oh, no, I don't want to send her to the pain clinic. I want you to start acupuncture on her. And I'm like, well, sure. And then in my heart, I'm like, and what about the person from the ward 7 on 8 on the Medicaid? They don't have that choice. They're going to go to you and they're going to get opioids and they're going to die prematurely. And, I've been in it seeing the consequences of this system. And even though I'm 100% agree with Rockney, the system does save millions of lives, but it saves those millions of lives almost exclusively in an acute care settings. Plus, in some parts of chronic care where problems are highly medicalized, like acute cancer, for example, right? We can cure it sometimes. But if you look at the millions and millions of patients in the country who are in between, they're not quite in an acute care setting. Their chronic conditions are really not managed well, and they're looking for answers and they're not finding them. And if you have money, you will. You'll go find a good professional eventually. But if you don't, you're stuck. And I think we really can't allow for that, And it looks like from political, we don't do politics on this, but I can say just 30 seconds about it. It looks like we're dismantling the system further as we go, right? So that we're going to have a weaker infrastructure, and the patients who don't have the means are going to be even worse shape. So that's why at AIM, we're actually pushing up. We're pushing forward. We're trying to get more money. We're saying, look, we got to have this access. And I would generalize it, Gina, beyond just functional medicine. I say it applies to everything. I mean, sometimes functional medicine is the best, and sometimes Reiki would do great. And we don't have infrastructure enough to even study how to do this right, because there's not enough revenue from research. And I've been doing this for 20 plus years, getting all kinds of research. But every time I start comparing myself to an actual senior NIH researcher, they're laughing at me, because that person may have tens of millions of dollars in grants, and I don't have a 1 million in grants because I'm doing this little projects for which I find money on the periphery. That shouldn't be like this, and it's not necessarily my fault that I picked the topic that's not the mainstream. So, but I think there's enough overall grassroots movement. And what really excites me is the new generation. I'm looking at my kids, I'm looking at 20 and 30-year-olds, and they're fed up with this. They're like, well, I'm not going to take this pill. I'm going to find a way to do this somehow else. And I think that's the way forward. I think it's when the public's going to say, oh no, public's going to vote with the feet. They're not going to go to the regular doctors. They're going to go to providers that can address their needs.
And I think I just feel like we're at a time. I have to do this work. I'm committed to do this work every day, and and looking forward to really being able to cultivate through the AIM clinic an opportunity to add this layer. It's just something. It's so important for us to do this now.
I think Moira has her hand up.
Yes.
First, thank you all for this. It's been, hey, JD, it's all been music to my heart for sure. I will say that, as a nurse and a former chief of integrative health and wellness at Walter Reed, these issues are so complex. But what I'm thinking about this morning is Dr. Wayne Jonas, who is a retired Army physician and researcher, and of course established the Office of, Alternative Medicine at NIH and worked for the World Health. But he had a book a number of years ago, actually it may have been as long as 10 years ago, called How Healing Works. And in the book, he acknowledges that whatever the medical community is providing to patients, whether it's therapy, medicine, surgery, only accounts for 30% of what happens to a human being. And so even if all of the investments we make into research were effective, it's only effective 30% of the time. So my challenge is always, how do we get people to remember that there's this 70%, and that 70% you actually own, right? As a human being, you own that 70%, right? We somehow allowed ourselves to forget. We handed that over, right, to what started out as like very brilliant and well-intentioned people that was then, of course, taken over by, business. And but I think that's the question, like, how do we remind people that what they need, they already have? They already have it. And that's where I'm most sad as well, when people feel as though there's nothing that they can do unless somebody else comes in and tells them what that is.
Moira, I can't agree more. It's so accurate. By the way, Wayne Jonas used to run Samueli Institute, and Samueli is one of the sponsors of AIM. So there's a connection here. And Wayne and I worked together at NCI for a long time as a advisors for the CAM curriculum at National Cancer Institute, by the way, which just got shut down by a new administration.
Mhm. And those of you who are here today who are on the mystical journey, you know, I think it's really a wonderful thing for us to recognize and remember that our conversation is not out there in the ethers, but that it is an integral part of our life and living every day. And it's important for us to own that and recognize that, you know, the mist of the breath that we all share together. We all walk through the mist of the breath that we all share together, and that mist of oneness, you know, is what Misha Inayat Khan spoke about. And so, as we continue to move through this journey, we can recognize that not only are we trying to manifest or amplify a conversation of oneness for the spirit, but a oneness for the wholeness of our being, you know, and that exists in every breath that we take, and that is not some mysterious thing. It's a reality. You know, I said the other day, I said, you know, we can't see the breath, but we know that the breath is there, except when it's cold, and you know, when it's cold you can see your breath. But I feel that's just because God has a sense of humor, you know, and wants us to know that there's great magic around us all the time. But this is not a separate conversation. It is a conversation that abides and exists in every breath. And I'll shut up so some other people can speak.
Yana has.
Yeah.
You gotta unmute yourself.
Let me see if I can help Yana a little bit.
No, I think she has to unmute on her end. I don't think we can unmute it. Not working? We'll try to type the point.
I'll
come back
we'll
later.
reach out.
Yeah.
I thought there was a way that I could invite her to unmute, which might make it easier, but apparently not. Okay.
I guess
there
it works now. Yes.
There we go.
Well, it's not a question. It's maybe like a positive point. I just watched this family therapy episode. Maybe some, you know, in Europe behind just popped in my feed, and it was a couple, and this therapist been working with them for a long time, and their problems were just getting deeper and deeper. And in this plenum with her peers, the other therapist, she was kind of raising her frustration and kind of ready to give up. And the clients, they even stopped the therapy and took a contact with her that they want to come back for the last session. And they were all anticipating that they're completely stuck, they're going to come back and just say that, you know, they separated and give up. And then to her surprise, they came back and said, no, things are much better. And she was utterly surprised and said, what happened? And they said, we went out dancing for the first time in our life. Mm-hmm. And she was utterly perplexed. And they say everything is great. So maybe through even these avenues, it will be reaching people that to get out of the heads and often to connect through the rhythm, I guess, and the dance through the rhythm, and the music and heartbeat can really elevate and find that mutual ground instead of sitting for hours and spending thousands of dollars talking about the problems. So it does bring, so that was like just a positive. I was really pleased to see it, and hopefully through these avenues it will be reaching people from different, and that's a popular show. So one seed, one drop at a time. Here and there.
Thank you, Yana.
I think let's address Rockney's question. I think it's a really good one. So I'll start since I will pull up the question, and then Fred, you can contribute. So yeah, I think in healing activity in an IIT order, we've been trying to do this deep work for quite some time, for actually a long time. I think I've been involved for about 20 years or so. And I think part of my realization many years ago was there's so many profound tools that we have. And they're not necessarily Sufi based. Some of them are yoga based, some of them are, other Buddhism, and there's so many different tools, but we're kind of in our own bubble, right? And I said, look, we got to get out of this bubble, because ultimately our responsibility is for a greater society at some point. At least
Misha, let me interrupt you for just a
Sure.
second. Can you pull back and tell the larger group what this order is?
Oh yeah, so if you came a little bit late, I did put the link to it. So I'll put the link again. It's just that Fred and I has done training in this activity, and I have been one of the leaders in that activity for a long time. I do state that most of my spiritual training come from this organization, for better or worse. It's just where my heart is. It doesn't mean yours needs to be there. But the point there is, I think it feels to me that the world is at the certain place where we have to speak up beyond our bubbles, because I think we're too comfortable in certain areas. And I think Fred said this early on in the first half an hour, that we got to sit together and we got to do things together, talk and eat and whatnot. And I think that requires us to get outside of that comfort zone of this bubble. And that's where I'm going with this is, to your question, Rakni, is I'm trying to get this out of the NIT order into a larger domain and say, I want to bring these tools. I want to talk about this, but I want to talk about this in a broader context. And I want to hear what people who don't share this view are going to say, because ultimately the best way to do this is to understand the other view, not contradict it, enrich from it and give back, and then move forward together. Otherwise, we're continuously becoming more and more bipartisan, and there's just more and more separation and more conflicts all around. I'm sure Fred has something to add.
Yeah, I mean, I just, it's been my experience over the last 30 years or so that, I mean, I've traveled to so many different places in the world, and I've sat with many, many different people from many, many different traditions. And essentially, when we're talking about health and well-being, and we're talking about how important it is for us to know our stories and to learn our stories, when we celebrate the heart, it's all the same. The bottom line is it's the frequency and vibration of the intentionality to do that which is for the greater good, and to rise our hearts and our minds and our health and our spirit to a level that really amplifies sort of the highest element of what it is to be human. Murshid Hazrat Inayat Khan was a great musician. He was a great musician, and when he traveled, he played music and it moved people's heart. I think, so when we take like a look at the language of our intentionality, right? I think that's really kind of what it's all about, I didn't look. I'll tell you a quick story. When I was 17 years old, I worked at the New Jersey Psychiatric Hospital in Trenton, New Jersey. It's not there anymore. It was a state hospital for people who had mental health challenges. But I worked a 3 to 11 shift, right? And I was 17 years old, and I loved jazz, and I was a singer, and I did musical theater. And I came into, and I worked on the medical surgical ward, and there were like 30 men on this medical surgical ward, and they had severe challenges. None of them could walk. You had to lift them up and put them in the bed. Many of them had really serious, mental challenges. And so, and you have to lock yourself on the ward. You go on the ward, and I walked onto this ward, and there was screaming, and there was noise, and everybody was up, and everybody was in chairs. It was just total chaos, right? And I'm like, I'm just a lowly orderly. What I don't know, so I didn't know how to do it. I just had to sing. So I just went, yeah, and got their attention. And then I was like, oh, we're going to have a great time this afternoon. Hey, everybody, it's me. Come on, let's have a great time And they got quiet. And I just began to like sing them. They were like, whoa, what just happened? And we transformed the experience in this space. After about 2 months, the head of the department called and said, look, Fred, I'm going to have to let you go. And I'm like, why? He was like, because like I said, look, this is really, really working. I mean, every night, I do little lullabies for people, just whatever they need to hear. He said, I know it works, Fred. I know it's crazy, it works. He said, but you work the 3 to 11 shift, and when they wake up at like 7 o'clock in the morning, from 7 o'clock in the morning until like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, they're just going, where's Fred? So it became, and they said, I said, why don't you just get like a piano and, play piano during the day? It was like, no, we can't. So my point is, I don't care whether it's a prayer. I don't care whether it's a prayer. I don't care whether it's sitting and just looking into another person's eyes and having them feel the sensation that they're being heard, right? And that who they are matters. I don't care whether it's in French or English or Spanish. The power of intention, the frequency and vibration of loving intention towards being for another that which will enhance their ability to be whole is the true definition of spirituality. So we're all saying things in different ways. It's important for us to, had another great teacher, Elma Lewis from Boston, Massachusetts, who said, life is an improvisational act. So we need to improvise ourselves into understanding what are the threads in the tapestry of how we choose to be with each other. And let's find ways to weave the diversity of that into a space where everyone is included and it feels right. I think that's what
Fred,
yeah.
Thank you, Fred. I think I could go on all afternoon and into the evening, but we've made a commitment to end at a certain time. Fred, I wonder if it's, I hope I'm not putting you on the spot, but maybe you could give us a benediction, something to leave with, sound, voice, closing words, closing thoughts.
Sure. First of all, thank you all for the time we've shared together. We've talked about many things, about the beating heart and the song of the breath and technology and pharmacology too. But the true reality for both me and you is we were created to be healthy, whole, and happy. Together we can find ways in every breath we take. So peace and blessings to all of you as we now go our way. And from time to time, each day, please remember that you are beautiful and a part of the harmony of this our beating hearts. Be blessed, everybody. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.